Then He Appeared, by Omar Cuellar. Eddie found it very hard to fall asleep because his wife and children had left him alone on the farm. He missed them terribly, but now there was nothing he could do to make them come back to him. Every night, Eddie lay in bed on his back, staring at the ceiling and thinking about them. What were they doing now that he was no longer part of their lives? More importantly, what was Eddie Jr. doing now, without his father? 1920 was a terrible year to be Eddie, a farmer in the state of Iowa. The Great War had ended, and with it, the massive demand for food in Europe, which the United States had helped supply, had dropped dramatically. The reduced demand had caused a sharp fall in the prices of everything farms like Eddie's produced, making life extremely difficult for those who worked the land. Worse still, many farmers had expanded their operations during the war years to meet that demand, and more than a few had gone deeply into debt to finance those expansions. On top of everything, Prohibition had gone into effect on January 17th, and over the following months it caused demand for apples, grapes, hops, and barley to plummet. Eddie closed his eyes and opened them again. He found himself staring at the same gloomy ceiling of his bedroom. Now his wife and son had left him too, because Europe, the American government, and plain bad luck had all turned their backs on him. His wife had become convinced that keeping the farm going and making a profit from it were two goals that were very difficult, if not outright impossible, under the current conditions. But Eddie was stubborn, and he had decided to stay alone on the farm, take care of it, and make it prosper with his own hands and the little savings he had, no matter what it cost. Fortunately, Eddie had no debts. Nearly a year had passed since his family left him alone on the farm. One sunny morning while he was cleaning the barn, he noticed the shadow of a person near him. But that was impossible. He was the only one living on the farm. The place was isolated. The nearest town was 2 hours away by car, so that shadow could only be his imagination playing a cruel trick on him. Perhaps the loneliness he felt was so overwhelming that he had started imagining someone coming to watch him work, or someone to talk to and spend time with. Moments after seeing the shadow, the idea began to appeal to him more and more. Not just the idea of imagining a flesh-and-blood person like himself, but specifically the idea of imagining a friend. What would this friend be like, he wondered. He would be a wonderful friend, he told himself. But what would he look like? Definitely a well-dressed, elegant man. Not like me. Look at the rags I'm wearing. How would he speak? What would his voice sound like? What kind of clothes would he like to wear? What sort of personality would he have? Oh, wow. So many questions. So many things to think about. As time passed, the possibility of imagining a friend seemed more and more enticing. He told himself, "Do you want to go insane?" The following week, he was sitting at the kitchen table. He had finished a meager breakfast, an egg and a banana, and although he was still hungry, the idea of creating an imaginary friend in his mind kept him from thinking about his body's hunger. He no longer knew whether he couldn't concentrate because of the hunger or because of the persistent thought that if he really tried, he could imagine and summon the figure of a new friend, driving away the loneliness that had tormented him since his family left and the American government abandoned him. He closed his eyes and tried to visualize his new imaginary friend, but he saw nothing. So he began talking to the wall. Naturally, the wall didn't answer. Then he tried talking to one of the chairs, but the chair remained silent too. How stupid, he said to himself, angry, punching the air with one hand. How stupid I am. 3 weeks had passed since he first tried to imagine his new friend, but because he was so stubborn, Eddie hadn't given up. Day after day, he practiced convincing his mind that if he willed it strongly enough, he could bring a lifeless being into existence. Soon, after many days, he began to see more than just a shadow. Then he saw a face floating without the rest of the body. Later, he started to make out the torso and all the limbs. The clothing of his new imaginary friend kept changing constantly, until one day, while finishing milking one of his favorite cows, he heard a voice behind him say, Here I am. At last. I'm here. In full body. Thank you for bringing me back. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Nathan Essery. The surprise was so great that Eddie fell to the ground, and even the cow seemed startled. He couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. It was exactly the person his mind had been rehearsing for so long. This time, all the parts of the body were connected. No more floating head. The clothing was visible and defined. No more blurry or distorted visions. The figure and presence of Nathan Essery was indistinguishable from that of a real flesh-and-blood human being. Yet Eddie couldn't understand why his new imaginary friend had decided to call himself Nathan. He had never thought of that name. He didn't even know anyone named Nathan in his circle. Annoyed, Eddie protested, "Nathan, I don't want you to be called that. Your name is Jimmy." "Jimmy? Who do you take me for?" Nathan replied, frowning. "You have no control over me. I make my own decisions. Don't you see? If you could decide for me, your mind would realize I'm not real. You've been practicing so long to create someone with your imagination that you finally opened a new door inside your mind. Your mind is very powerful, so powerful that it managed to create me, so powerful that it can't even tell whether I'm real or not. Congratulations, practice makes perfect." Nathan helped Eddie up from the ground. "So, what now?" Eddie asked Nathan. "I don't know. You brought me here," Nathan replied. "I never thought this would actually work. I really wanted a new friend. But now that I have one, I simply don't know what to do with him." "Well, you'll figure something out, won't you?" Nathan added, wandering around the place, strutting and whistling happily because now he had 2 legs to go wherever he wanted. "What the hell are you doing?" Eddie asked. "Can't you see? I'm running. Look, now I'm jumping. Whee! Stop acting like a child." "Well, in a way I am one. For me this is a brand new world, remember? You've been here 43 years. I've been here only minutes." "Hey, where are you going?" Eddie shouted. "To see your house, the house where we're going to live together." Nathan took off running, and Eddie had to run too, just to keep up. Inside the house, Nathan proceeded to visit and inspect every room. Like a child, he kept expressing surprise, gaping at everything he saw. "Stop licking the walls," Eddie scolded him. "Why?" Nathan asked, surprised. "Because now I'll have to clean them." "So you don't care about me? Aren't you worried I'll get sick if I keep licking the walls, the way parents worry about their little children?" Nathan crossed his arms. "How do you know so much about the adult world and at the same time so little, like a child?" Eddie snapped. Then he closed his eyes for a moment and thought, "Why do I have to explain anything to this being that only exists in my mind?" He opened his eyes again and, raising an eyebrow, said, "You're awfully sensitive for someone imaginary." "Well, if you say so," and Nathan vanished instantly. "Hey, come back. I order you," Eddie exclaimed, raising his voice higher and higher as he looked around. He even glanced up at the ceiling in case Nathan was hanging from a lamp or crawling along the rafters like a spider. "This can't be happening. We just met and we're already having problems." Nathan never appeared again. More than a month passed without Eddie being able to imagine Nathan again. Once more he sat at the kitchen table, eating his usual meager breakfast, an egg and a banana. He got up to pour himself a glass of milk, and when he sat back down, he jumped in fright because something that hadn't been there before now sat in the center of the table. It was an old, moldy book covered in black leather. He immediately felt great revulsion toward the object. He had never seen a more horrible book. "Are you here, Nathan? Is this your book?" Eddie looked around, searching for him, but no one was there. Just him and that horrible book that seemed to be watching him. "Nathan, you're scaring me. If this is your book, please appear and tell me. Forgive me if I offended or hurt you last time. I promise I won't raise my voice again." Nothing. Total silence. Not even the birds, the farm animals, or the sound of trees and plants rustling in the wind could be heard. "Nathan, please. This book isn't mine. I've never seen it before. I didn't imagine this book. Nathan, appear. Is this your book?" Eddie sat there a while longer, waiting for some sign or for Nathan to appear, but nothing happened. Although he still felt repulsed by the book, he had to open it and inspect its contents. He fetched a rag, ran it under the tap, dampened it slightly, and used the wet cloth to wipe away the dust and mold covering the cover. The book had no title. It was a heavy tome with many pages, but every single one was blank. There wasn't a single illustration inside. Eddie picked up the book again and began slowly turning the pages one by one to make sure there really was nothing written in it, when suddenly words began to appear before him on one of the blank pages. Surprised, Eddie stared as a few words emerged and joined together, one by one, until they formed the following paragraph. Sleep, watchmen, until the stars turn 26,000 years, and I return to the place where I now burn. Then other stars shall rise upon the axis of the heavens, stars that soothe, stars that bless, granting sweet oblivion. Only when my orbit is complete shall the past disturb your door. When he finished reading the verse, he waited for more words to appear, but nothing else happened. Frightened and desperate, he didn't know whether to burn the book, bury it, or get rid of it somewhere. He closed it with both hands and left it on the table while he thought about what to do. He wasn't sure who the book belonged to, but if it truly belonged to Nathan, and Nathan found out he had disposed of it, Troy would burn. Eddie was certain Troy would burn, because Nathan had turned out to have quite a sensitive personality, so it was better not to get rid of the book. After thinking it over a little more, he decided to lock it away in a drawer. Exactly, he thought, as he placed the book inside the drawer. This way, if Nathan ever comes back looking for his book, I'll give it to him, and we can reconcile. Keeping the book and waiting for Nathan to come back for it is the best decision I can make. He repeated it twice to convince himself. Eddie was sleeping very peacefully in the total darkness of his room, unaware that in one corner of the room a man's figure was trembling, seated in a chair, holding a book in both hands. Sleep, watchman, until the... Eddie woke with a start, jumping in bed. Groping in the dark, he quickly got up to turn on one of the lights. Still half asleep, he managed to see Nathan sitting in that chair, holding the very book he had locked away in a drawer. You scared me. What's wrong with you? Eddie complained. Thanks for not throwing it away, Nathan added, lifting the book with one hand to show him. I didn't throw it away because I didn't want you bursting into tears. It's okay. I admit I was too sensitive last time. Did you come back just for the book? Eddie asked, a bit annoyed. Not for the book, but because of you. Your loneliness drew me. What are you talking about? I didn't draw you. You're nothing but my imagination. Nathan let out a little laugh. Now I'll never leave you again. Nathan stood up from his seat and headed toward the door. Where are you going? Eddie asked. To my room, to sleep. It's late. Or do you want me to sleep with you? No, I just want to sleep. I'm very tired, Eddie replied, still rubbing his eyes. Nathan turned off the light and left through the door. Eddie was so exhausted that he dropped onto his bed like a heavy rock and fell asleep once more. 3 months later, this has to stop. There isn't a single day I don't live in constant fear, Eddie thought while hiding, crouched inside the wardrobe of his bedroom. After Nathan returned, the disturbances had grown more serious. Sometimes, Eddie would be in the kitchen and hear footsteps on the ceiling as Nathan ran, jumped, or played in one of the upstairs rooms. Other times, Nathan would appear out of nowhere, right in front of him, without warning, anywhere in the house. This behavior frightened and exasperated him greatly. There were also many occasions when, while Eddie was asleep, he would wake with a jolt to find Nathan standing beside his bed, watching him sleep. And the worst were the creaking doors. Since the house was very old, Eddie could hear Nathan wandering through the entire place because he could hear the doors creaking. Every time he heard that creak, goosebumps covered his skin. The day his patience finally ran out arrived. Once while he was showering, Nathan appeared beside him asking if he had seen his book anywhere. Furious, Eddie stopped showering, got dressed, and in his mind made the decision to leave the farm without even saying goodbye to Nathan. In his bedroom, Eddie already had a suitcase packed to go reunite with his family when he suddenly heard footsteps in the hallway. He quickly hid in the wardrobe before Nathan entered the room. "I know you're in the wardrobe. Why don't you come out and tell me you want to leave? Why do you want to abandon me? How can you do this to me? You, of all people, know what it feels like to be abandoned by someone." Eddie couldn't take it anymore. He stepped out of the wardrobe, holding his suitcase in one hand. "I'm leaving because you've worn me out. You're always scaring me, appearing whenever and wherever you want. I can't even sleep comfortably anymore, thinking that at any moment you could be watching me. What kind of relationship is this? Since I can't make you disappear, I've decided to disappear myself. I'm going." "I've told you tirelessly that I'm not your imagination," Nathan explained. "Stop treating me like I am. At first I let you believe I was your imaginary friend, but there's no such thing as imaginary friends. You don't have, and never had, the mental power to imagine someone like me. As I already told you, my name is Nathan Essery, and I am a cosmic entity that can only be drawn by someone who feels profound loneliness. But being drawn is not the same as being imagined. I don't care. You've had enough of me. Get out. Disappear. Then you disappear," Nathan shouted. "I'm leaving," Eddie said definitively, and walked out of the house with his suitcase. He didn't even bother looking back. Nathan, proud as he was, stayed in the room, silent and angry like a child, arms crossed. He refused to go after Eddie. He couldn't understand why every human who drew him ended up abandoning him. That night it was very hard for Nathan to fall asleep, because Eddie had left him alone in that gloomy farm. He missed him terribly. Every night since then, Nathan lay in bed on his back, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Eddie. What was he doing now that Nathan was no longer part of his life? Now Nathan had decided to live on the farm and take care of it. Nearly a year had passed since Eddie abandoned him, and one sunny morning, while working to clean the barn, he saw the shadow of a person near him. He thought it might be Eddie. Maybe Eddie had come back. "Eddie, are you here?" Nothing. Total silence. Not even the birds, the farm animals, or the sound of trees and plants rustling in the wind could be heard. Moments after seeing that shadow, an idea began to appeal to him more and more. It was the crazy idea of having an imaginary friend. But what would this friend be like?